Who is Maliha's murderer?
Amidst the backdrop of Iran's recent history, spanning from the era of the Shah to the establishment of the Islamic Republic in the 1980s, a chilling murder unfolds within the affluent neighborhoods of Tehran. In this narrative, our quest delves into the heart of the mystery, searching for the elusive culprit.
Written by Elham Ghoreishi. On a rainy autumn night in Nahid west of Tehran, an individual hastily exited a villa, hurling a blood-stained knife into a nearby trash can before vanishing into the obscurity of the night. The following day, under a pristine Tehran sky, freshly cleansed by the previous night's rain and free from the haze of car exhaust, the magnificent Alborz mountain range to the north stood in clear view. At 8 in the morning, Armin, the 20-year-old son of Maliha, his voice quivering with fear, placed a desperate call to the police. In the criminal division of the Tehran police, the investigation into Maliha's murder swiftly commenced. The law enforcement officers promptly launched a thorough examination of the case. As Maliha was a prominent figure, the news of her murder rapidly disseminated throughout the media, capturing the attention of people not only in Tehran, but across the entirety of Iran. Concurrently, fresh rumors began to circulate, intensifying the public's interest and placing added pressure on the police. This surge in public interest posed additional challenges for the detectives as they carried out their investigations. The murder weapon, swiftly uncovered by the police, turned out to be a kitchen knife borrowed from Maliha's own kitchen. Oddly, there were no discernible fingerprints on it. Inside the house, the living room bore the disarray of a struggle, and the forensic doctor's analysis suggested that Maliha had been rendered paralyzed before her demise, likely from a blow to her neck, possibly inflicted by a fallen billiard stick. Additionally, the forensic doctor's findings indicated that the assailant had a taller and more robust stature than Maliha. However, this revelation didn't come as a shock, considering that Maliha, a middle-aged woman, possessed a notably petite physique. In fact, the majority of Tehran's adult population exceeded her in size, with Maliha being the exception rather than the rule. Maliha, despite her persistent irascibility and penchant for employing impolite language, was a woman with a kind heart who garnered affection from all quarters. There seemed to be no apparent legal or emotional disputes with anyone in her life. However, the absence of theft from her home, or any evident signs thereof, led to the conclusion that her murderer likely bore a personal vendetta against her. This peculiarity cast an unsettling shadow of suspicion. There were no visible indications of forced entry, suggesting that the perpetrator possessed a familiarity with Maliha. Detective Amani deduced that the murder was probably not premeditated, as the murder weapon was sourced from Maliha's own kitchen. This pointed to the possibility that a heated argument had escalated into a tragic incident rather than a planned act of homicide. Maliha's history paints a picture of a vibrant and energetic young woman hailing from a middle-class family in the heart of Tehran. Despite not pursuing higher education beyond high school, she embarked on a remarkable journey. Her entry into the national radio of Iran was facilitated through a connection established by one of her father's close friends. Her voice, melodious and captivating, quickly became her asset, and Maliha found her niche as a radio announcer. She embraced her role with enthusiasm, serving as both a presenter and host for a modest radio program. Over time, her magnetic presence and engaging delivery style garnered her a loyal following among the listeners. Beyond her professional life, Maliha was known for her lively and spirited personality. She had a knack for making friends and spreading positivity wherever she went. Despite her initial entry into the radio world, Maliha managed to make a lasting impact on her colleagues and the media landscape in Tehran. Maliha's social acumen swiftly propelled her forward. At the age of 25, she entered into a marriage with none other than Riza, one of the most renowned directors in Iran at that time. This union not only solidified her personal life, but also greatly enhanced her ties within the vibrant and influential artistic circles of Iran. From this union, a son named Arman came into the world. Though the marriage ultimately proved to be short-lived, Maliha and Riza amicably parted ways. Armed with her influential connections, Maliha embarked on a successful career as a television show and music record producer. She not only achieved financial prosperity, but also garnered immense respect within the artistic community. Maliha had become a powerful presence, and artists were well aware that approaching her could open doors to elevated positions in the world of art and entertainment. In the dynamic decades of the 1960s and 1970s, Iran embarked on a rapid trajectory towards modernization, driven by a confluence of factors that shaped the nation's cultural landscape. Central to this transformation was the visionary leadership of the Shah of Iran, whose enthusiasm for progress and innovation extended deeply into the realms of art and culture. However, it was Queen Farah, the Shah's consort, who emerged as a prominent patroness of the arts, championing and elevating the creative industries to unprecedented heights. The era witnessed a remarkable flourishing of radio, television, music, theater, and cinema, becoming a golden age for the artistic community in Iran. Artists enjoyed not only creative freedom, but also an elevated social status, as they became the standard bearers of the nation's cultural renaissance. This newfound appreciation for the arts was underscored by substantial government funding allocated to support and nurture the creative minds of the nation. Financial backing flowed into various artistic projects, propelling the development of world-class talent and cultural institutions. Dance halls and concert venues dotted the landscape, not only providing platforms for artistic expression, but also becoming the vibrant epicenters of cultural enrichment and entertainment. Amid this transformative period, Maliha emerged as a standout figure, celebrated for her exceptional talent and contributions to the arts. Her deep connection to the royal court afforded her a unique role in shaping the cultural landscape of the time. Maliha took on significant responsibilities, overseeing and managing numerous cultural projects that left an indelible mark on the artistic world of Iran. Her dedication to the promotion of the arts and her ability to bridge the gap between the artistic community and the royal court earned her a well-deserved reputation as a cultural luminary. Up until the year 1979, Iran enjoyed a period of relative stability and progress, but that trajectory was abruptly altered by the advent of the Islamic Revolution. This historic event saw the overthrow of the monarchy and the end of the king's reign, replaced by an Islamic government under the leadership of Ayatollah Khomeini. In the early days of the revolution, a palpable sense of uncertainty and apprehension gripped the artistic community. Fearing the new regime's policies and restrictions, many artists made the heart-wrenching decision to leave behind their homes and belongings and seek refuge in Western countries. Among these expatriates, Los Angeles emerged as a popular destination, and individuals like Riza embarked on a challenging journey into exile. Exile, however, brought with it a stark contrast to their previous lives of creative freedom and success. In foreign lands, these artists faced the harsh reality of economic hardship and dislocation, forging new lives in the face of adversity. For those who opted to stay in Iran, a different destiny awaited. Many found themselves incarcerated, ensnared in the turbulence of political change. In order to secure their release and a limited opportunity to continue their artistic endeavors within the confines of Islamic laws, these artists were compelled to pen letters of repentance. These letters served as poignant symbols of their resilience and determination to persevere despite the shifting sands of history. This tumultuous period left an indelible mark on the lives of Iran's artists, forcing them to grapple with profound decisions that would shape their futures. The Islamic Revolution of 1979 was a watershed moment that altered the course of their lives, challenging their artistic pursuits and freedoms in ways they had never imagined. Maliha, along with her son Arman, found themselves among the individuals who remained in Iran during those tumultuous times. However, it wasn't a matter of choice. Rather, it was due to a set of compelling circumstances. During the height of the revolution's chaos, Maliha faced a personal health crisis. She had discovered a malignant tumor in her uterus and was in the midst of undergoing treatment. Following a rigorous series of surgeries and chemotherapy, she emerged physically weakened and unable to embark on a journey abroad. Meanwhile, her son Armin was facing his own set of constraints. Compulsory military service left him with little choice but to remain within the country's borders, as leaving was not permitted during this period. Their decision to stay in Iran was not by preference, but rather a convergence of health concerns and obligations, resulting in a challenging and uncertain period in their lives. Events unfolded rapidly, one after another, as the new regime took control. Among their initial actions, the leaders of the revolution ordered the execution of thousands of high-ranking individuals within Iran's formidable military ranks. These individuals were subjected to extrajudicial executions solely for their association with the army, their roles as pilots, their status as major generals, or any connections they had to the former Shah's court. During that period, Saddam Hussein, perceiving the Iranian military as vulnerable, seized the opportunity and initiated a brutal war by invading Iran from its western borders. Freshly released from both the hospital and the confines of the Islamic Republic's prison, Maliha, who had reluctantly signed a letter of repentance, embarked on a desperate mission to secure her son's safety. Armin faced the grim prospect of deployment to the front lines of the Iran-Iraq War, a dire situation that prompted Maliha to take extraordinary measures. She endeavored to arrange for Armin's passage across the border, seeking refuge in Europe. The plan involved a perilous journey through Turkey via a smuggling network. Unfortunately, despite her valiant efforts, the escape attempt did not succeed, and Armin was forced to return to Tehran. There, he could not evade his impending deployment to the war front, leaving Maliha with a heavy heart and deep concern for her son's safety. Armin fell victim to the regime's propaganda machine while serving on the war front, his mind manipulated to harbor resentment against the prosperous individuals of the previous regime, including his own parents. This indoctrination ran so deep that he harbored animosity even toward his closest kin. Despite enduring multiple injuries, Armin displayed remarkable resilience, repeatedly returning to the battlefield as soon as he recovered. The tragic turn of events reached its peak on the day he discovered his mother's lifeless body. This heart-wrenching moment occurred while Armin was recuperating in Tehran, his recovery further complicated by the loss of his left hand. The physical and emotional wounds he carried became emblematic of the profound toll the war and the ideological manipulation had taken on his life. The police interrogations initiated with Armin at the center of attention. The detective, keen to unravel the events of that fateful night, began by probing Armin's whereabouts during the incident. Armin, his face marked by the scars of war, recounted that he had spent that particular evening at the residence of a close friend who, like himself, bore the wounds of battle. In an attempt to provide some context, he explained that he shared cramped living quarters with his friend's extended family, totaling 9 individuals. Detective Amini, visibly taken aback, couldn't help but inquire about Armin's unconventional living situation, considering his family's significant property. Armin, with a mix of resignation and bitterness, revealed the strained relationship he had with his mother, Maliha. His words painted a portrait of a deep-seated disapproval of her lifestyle choices. He cited her occasional consumption of alcohol and the presence of a small dog in her home, both of which, according to Armin's interpretation of Islamic laws, were considered transgressions. Armin went further, underscoring the assertion that praying in his mother's house was, in his eyes, invalid. As the detective shifted the conversation to more personal matters, he asked Armin about his dominant hand. Armin gestured towards his right hand, a stark reminder of the sacrifices he had made for his country. His left hand had been amputated as a result of a war injury, but his tone conveyed gratitude for the survival of his dominant hand. Detective Amini, his brow glistening with sweat, continued to press Armin for information. The detective's next question focused on the purpose and timing of Armin's visit to his mother's house on that fateful morning. Armin, his voice quivering with emotion, responded, "It was shortly before I stumbled upon my mother, her body covered in blood. It was in the early hours of the morning, a time when the world is draped in darkness." Armin paused briefly, gathering his thoughts and emotions. He continued, "I had gone there to retrieve my essential documents that were vital for my re-enlistment in the service. My mother had hidden them, seemingly in an attempt to thwart my return to the battlefield." The detective inquired further, seeking clarification. "So, just to confirm, your mother concealed your documents with the intention of preventing your return to the war, correct?" Armin nodded solemnly, affirming the detective's inquiry with a simple gesture of his head. The police conducted thorough inquiries among the neighbors, seeking information regarding any unusual sounds or suspicious activities during the night of the incident, the hours leading up to it, or in the days immediately prior. Maliha's residence was situated in the affluent northern district of Tehran, where the houses boasted opulent proportions akin to palaces. This opulence meant that there was considerable distance and sound insulation between neighboring homes. However, it's important to note that the majority of residents in the same alley were staunch adherents of the ruling regime, occupying homes once owned by individuals who had either fled the country or met a tragic end through execution. The inhabitants of this neighborhood were not on amicable terms with Maliha, who had formerly been associated with the royal court. Consequently, there was a noticeable lack of communication or rapport between her and these individuals, leading to an isolated existence within the bustling metropolis. Detective Amini approached one of the neighboring women, who, with one hand, struggled to maintain her hijab while attempting to rein in her two lively children. They ran around with soiled feet and faces. With a sense of caution, he inquired, "Do you believe that the animosity Maliha faced from her neighbors might have played a role in her tragic demise?" The woman reacted with a sharp slap of her hand against her face, a gesture of disbelief, and then uttered, "Oh God, what are you suggesting? To be perfectly candid, Miss Maliha was a virtuous woman. Any past wrongdoings or tarnished actions were confined to a time before the revolution. We should not be lumped together with those actions. Divine justice will prevail, as God himself will address her sins on the day of resurrection." One of the neighbors brought up the name of Bahram, a middle-aged male actor who had frequented Maliha's house before the revolution more than any other visitor. The police decided to pay a visit to Bahram's residence to engage in a conversation with him. Upon seeing the approaching officers, Bahram made a futile attempt to flee, triggering initial suspicions that he might be involved in Maliha's murder. However, during the subsequent interrogation, it became apparent that Bahram's deep-seated fear of the police and the specter of post-revolutionary executions had been a pervasive influence in his life. As the interview unfolded, it was revealed that Bahram lived with a constant sense of dread, constantly haunted by the possibility of arrest and execution. This perpetual apprehension was further exacerbated by the presence of opium in his home, a substance that played a role in intensifying his fear of encountering law enforcement. Bahram, visibly shaken and hunched over in the interrogation room, sought some solace as Detective Amini requested a cigarette. He began to speak, his voice trembling, "Sir, I implore you to consider, why would I have any motive to harm Maliha? She was my dearest companion during these trying times. Reflect, if you will, on the days when I occupied a prominent place in society. Crowds of admirers, particularly young women, would gather just to secure an autograph, and my images adorned the walls of cinemas. What sin have I truly committed, apart from being an actor and partaking in on-screen embraces with women? Now, look at our plight. Here we are, sitting in this obscure corner, finding refuge in the numbing haze of opium. My greatest aspiration was merely to sit across from Maliha, reminiscing about our shared past and cherished memories, and then return to my humble abode. I assure you, sir, I have not engaged in any nefarious deeds. My sole transgression, if you may call it that, is this opium, which I solemnly pledge to forsake. Bahram then shifted the focus of the conversation, urging the detective to seek answers from Abbas, Maliha's dedicated housekeeper. He offered an intriguing detail. On the very night when Maliha met her tragic end, she spoke to me over the phone. She mentioned that Abbas had purchased items for her from the market and was planning to pay her a visit. That's the extent of my knowledge, sir. Detective Amini granted Bahram his release and proceeded back to the interrogation room, where Abbas had been waiting for an extended duration. The detective addressed Abbas firmly, saying, "Listen, all the evidence seems to point in your direction. You held the keys to the house, and you were the last person known to have been there. If you confess, it might work in your favor, and I can consider reducing your punishment." Abbas spoke with a heartfelt plea, his voice filled with sincerity and anguish. "Sir, I've repeated it countless times to you and your esteemed colleagues. I am not responsible for this horrific act. I held a deep and genuine affection for the lady. She never ceased to show kindness, frequently showering me and my children with gifts. While she may have exhibited some frustration due to Armin's struggles and his deployments to war, deep down, she remained a fundamentally compassionate woman. It is undeniable that she did not adhere to the Muslim faith, and her actions, such as drinking wine and keeping a dog at home, contradicted our beliefs. I'm aware of the Quranic teachings concerning infidels, but I must emphasize that I am not a murderer. I had no hand in the lady's demise." Abbas continued, his tone somber. "I find solace in the fact that, before she suffered a fatal stabbing, she was rendered unconscious by a blow from a billiard stick to her neck, sparing her from prolonged suffering. May God bless her soul. She was indeed a profoundly good-hearted woman, and I pray for the forgiveness of her sins." The detective responded swiftly, his curiosity piqued. "Hold on a moment, let me clarify this. You mentioned a billiard stick and a blow to the neck. How did you come by this specific information?" Abbas, realizing his blunder, fell silent for a few tense minutes. He stammered as he replied, "Well, you see, I might have read it somewhere. Perhaps it was in the murder report. Or maybe one of your colleagues mentioned it. I can't say for sure." Detective Amini, his confidence growing, responded firmly, "No, Abbas, only I and the forensic doctor were privy to these details." With this revelation, the enigma surrounding Maliha's murder was unraveled. The following day, headlines in the media declared that Maliha's killer had been identified, a man who had engaged in an illicit relationship with the victim. This individual was one of the survivors of the fallen regime, and a heated argument with Maliha had tragically escalated, resulting in her demise. A few weeks later, a low-ranking border police officer, who had been incarcerated since the time of the revolution until Maliha's murder, confessed to the crime on national television under duress, succumbing to a forced confession. He was subsequently executed. The case was officially closed, bringing an end to the mysterious tragedy that had gripped the city. The end. Elham Ghoreishi.
Be sure to like our content and stay tuned by subscribing.